And so we're going to see if those consequences are going to be put in place against the Trump administration or not. Obviously, if they're not and the Trump administration gets away with it and they don't bring back Mr. Abrego Garcia, that's when we've reached the point of, there's no rule of law. They're not following the law. They're not subject to the law. And that's when we've got a very serious constitutional crisis where people, not just people, that aren't supportive of this administration, even people that are supportive or voted for Trump, they should be concerned, because when there's no law, that means they can do whatever it is they want when they're not following the law.
Alrighty, welcome in. Alabama Politics this week. Josh Moon and
David Person.
How are you, David?
I'm good. I've been getting paychecks for quite a while now, and I've been showing up for work. I feel great.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Novel concept.
Yeah,
I hear some people aren't doing that.
What's funny is you could do that and be well rested with naps and whatnot. And still be perfectly fine, be perfectly well within your rights to do that.
I'm napping and getting checks and working. I'm doing it all, man.
Yeah. You're getting your job done. As long as you're doing the job, you're okay, right? Yeah. So listen up, before we get rolling here and tell you about the shenanigans that have happened over the last week in Alabama politics, we need to tell you about our good friends at Wind Creek Entertainment who sponsor this, because it is Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. That is Wind Creek. They operate 3 great resorts in the state of Alabama, in Wetumpka, Atmore, and Montgomery. You will not regret going and staying, especially those ones in Wetumpka and Atmore. Ooh, it's so
nice places.
Get into the spas, get into the restaurants, go down and have a good time. Right now, everybody is starting to schedule the beach trips. We told you about this last year, and we're going to remind you of it again. If you're coming from North Alabama, it's a great little breakup spot right there, okay? Either Wetumpka, you're coming from a little further south, you stop in Atmore, you stay overnight, you go to the spa, you go to the pool. They got a nice pool down there. Hey, I'll tell you another great spot down there as well, OWA, the water park that they have, that they operate. Another fantastic opportunity for you to go there. But go to some of the resorts and stay, book a stay, have a good time, treat the family. There's stuff for the kids in Wetumpka and Atmore, I know for a fact, that just go down, book them up, have a good time, have good food, have fun around the pool. Maybe, check out the entertainment schedule online. You can check them out at Wind Creek Entertainment. Just Google it up, and there's probably going to be an act of some sorts. They have all sorts of. I told you about seeing Chris Tucker there one time. He was funny, man.
Yeah, and I know they just had Monica. I think it was it back in March? I think.
Yeah,
I think Monica was there, and so they bring in some first class talent, A-list talent.
Yep. Yeah. It's a great place. I'm telling y'all check them out. Book a stay online. Go down. You will not regret it. I'm telling you, the family will love you for it. Either do it going and coming back, especially on the way back. Everybody's sad you're leaving the beach. Get you another night stay. Break it up. Have a good time. Have some good food and stuff. All right. Let's get into this. I was going to tell you too. I made my first trip to the Orion Amphitheater here in Huntsville on Friday night to see Kevin Hart. Yeah. It's Kevin's still good, man. Still got it. Had some funny jokes. Really enjoyed the one about Michael Jordan having dud kids. But it was.
What? No, he didn't.
Yeah.
That ain't right.
He was saying that he's got 4 kids and he wants to make sure at least one of them make it. He didn't want to have duds. He didn't want to have 4 duds. And he said, "Let me tell you somebody. I'm going to tell you right now, somebody who has had duds." Michael Jordan.
That is so wrong.
Yeah, I know, right? Wrong. At the end of the result, yep. Also, probably a good time to tell you, Michael Jordan, not a Kevin Hart fan. Doesn't care for me.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, right. But anyways, the venue is really, really great. It really is.
So, was it a sold out show? Were there a lot of people there?
No, there were a ton of people. I'm not sure if it was sold out. If it was not sold out, it was close to it.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was very close to it, if not sold out. But it was, yeah, man, there were a lot of people packed in there.
Yeah.
We had a good little section. It was cold. God, it was cold. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
had the blankets
Mm-hmm.
and the whole deal, man. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a chilly evening, but it was fun. We had a good time, good show, good venue. In and out was easy, no problems. Really enjoyed the whole experience. I highly recommend it if you're going somewhere. The Orion folks, they do a good job. And listen, if the Orion folks would like to advertise, since we're giving them free advertising,
So
go right ahead,
we
send the
love
check,
it. Yeah.
send the
That's
check.
right. We love to have
Yeah.
them as sponsor. I really dropped the ball. I knew he was coming to town.
Hmm.
And of course, you may or may not remember that he was one of the executive producers of the podcast that
Yes.
Erica and I did.
Yeah.
And I just didn't. I should have reached out to Erica to see, because I've never met him, never talked to him. I should have reached out to Erica to see if I could
Yeah.
have some kind of connection with him while he was in town. But I just, man, I got caught up in life and forgot he was even coming. So
Yeah, I got I don't know how true it was yeah, during the show, or if it was just the setup for the joke, but he said he had just arrived prior to the show and was heading out
yeah,
after that. And because
probably
he
true.
came in, said he did not even realize it was outside. So so man, I did not even know. Y'all got me up here, my nose running. It's everything.
Oh,
It's,
that's funny. That's
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
but no,
probably
it was
true.
good.
Yeah,
It was a damn good show.
yeah.
Less of a good show has been the first several months of, which seems like 3 years, of the Trump administration. Their latest in the anti-DEI push has been to cancel an agreement between the Department of Justice and the state of Alabama dealing with the raw sewage issues, wastewater and drinking water issues in Lowndes County and the Black Belt in general, but Lowndes County specifically, where, as has been well documented now for years, there is a significant issue with the sewage systems there, and the lack of sewage systems, and the lack of care from the state overall about the people down there, and supplying them with proper infrastructure to carry wastewater away from their homes. We've had Catherine Coleman Flowers on this show a couple of times. Catherine filed the original lawsuit that led to the agreement between the Department of Justice and the state of Alabama, and she has talked about these issues at length. It is not as simple as, well, why don't they just put in septic tanks? It's not that simple. It has to do with the soil that is in that area, in addition to the fact that in every other area in this state, when you pay taxes, the state and the local governments come in and provide you with basic wastewater infrastructure that
Infrastructure. That's
ensures
right.
that we are living in a safe and healthy society. That's what your tax dollars go for. That's what the tax dollars those people pay in Lowndes County go toward. But now, rectifying the decades of discrimination by the state of Alabama has been deemed DEI.
Yeah, so a couple of things on this. I was with Catherine. We're recording this on Wednesdays as usual. I was with Catherine for a while yesterday. First of all, one of the first things she said after I saw her was, I read Josh's column. I really liked it. So props
Nice.
to you from Catherine.
Nice.
Secondly, we got to give some credit. Now, granted, they had dropped the ball for many, 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 many years in a very callous way. But I think at this time, we should give credit to the Alabama Department of Public Health, because they have gone on record publicly saying that they will continue with the program to try to correct this wrong as long as the funding is there. So we give them credit for that, which is a turnaround from not doing a doggone thing to help folks in Lowndes County before this. So we give them credit for that. Now, having said that, like you're saying, this move by the Trump administration is another example of just the grossly ignorant, callous bigotry that exists there, because that they exhibit, that they embrace, because to label sewer correction, to label the quest for clean water DEI is about as asinine as anything I've ever heard. This has nothing to do. And by the way, even if you did want to say it was DEI, which, maybe arguably you can in this particular case, because the people primarily being targeted are Black by the
it's not
lack of
DEI, it's
support
civil
from
rights.
the state.
Yeah,
It's, civil rights, social justice. But if you want to use that term DEI, I wouldn't necessarily quibble with calling environmental justice DEI. But here's the problem. Even if you want to say that, it's still fundamentally about people who've been deprived of a fundamental right. As you said, they're taxpayers. And you got people walking around with hookworm in Lowndes County. You got people there with kidney issues and other health issues because their water is contaminated, because they don't have access to water that's clean. This is this is not some contrived, social justice, civil rights, racism card or race card or whatever people want to call it. This is about something very fundamental. And yes, the people who are being primarily affected are Black. But this is still about something very fundamental. The callousness of this administration and the ignorance of this administration is just beyond belief. Beyond belief.
Yes. Well, I struggle with how to phrase this, because I don't want it to seem like I'm saying they're not ignorant. But this. I don't think this is an ignorance thing. I think this is a callous thing. This is all callousness. This is all racist. It's race baiting sort of thing. It's a dog whistle, a racist dog whistle for a certain group of people. That's what this is. There's no reason to cancel this outside of doing that.
No reason.
Because honestly, it didn't cost really the federal government that much money anyway. I mean, it wasn't anything that was going to be overly expensive for the federal government. It was, a plan put in place by the state of Alabama that was going to fix these problems that were there, that had existed for decades, that we all know have existed for decades, and that we all know that if they were happening in Mountain Brook, they would be fixed tomorrow, okay?
Yeah,
and not because they have the
yeah.
money. It would be using the same state money and federal money
Yep.
that they would
Yep.
be used in Lowndes County to fix those things, okay? All of it. But it would be fixed by tomorrow. The first time a turd rolled down the street in Mountain Brook, it would be fixed. All right. And that's just the bottom line to it. And so what this is just that dog whistle. That's all it is. It's to slap the DEI label on something because they've done a tremendous job. And I would say Democrats and others have done a very poor job of allowing it to happen. They've done a tremendous job of redefining the terms DEI, where to the point of we no longer even say what DEI means. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you say it out loud, if you say diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're against those. We're against DEI. Oh, really? You're against diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, not really that, but you know what I mean? It's that. And they try to make this claim that this is on its face. Whenever it's DEI, it's racist. It's racist against white people. Okay. Oh, it's reverse racism, where white people aren't getting a fair shot, and it's bullshit. It's whining bullshit
no question.
of the worst sort of kind. And they've just taken it and twisted it around.
Now there is one thing I'll say, one thing I'll say, maybe, not really pushing back on you, but I'll just say as a supplemental thought, let's add this to it. There are communities around the nation that deal with this problem. Unfortunately, this is not unique to Lowndes County, though Lowndes County may be one of the most intense examples of it, the most egregious examples. It's not unique to Lowndes County. There are predominantly white communities that have the same challenge. Catherine has talked about, hearing from or visiting, I can't remember which one, areas in the Appalachia where you find the same kind of challenge. So I would say, yes, I think you're right when you say it's race. I also think there's a class element to this, though, too. And the reason I say that is because I think if, as you said, if this were Mountain Brook, Alabama, it would be handled with a quickness. But I think not just because this community is predominantly black, but I think because it's also an underclass community, socioeconomically, I think it's easier for states to pick on or to neglect those communities.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also a part of this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, but, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see where the Trump administration has canceled a similar agreement for a predominantly white community.
No, I think that's a good point. I absolutely 100% agree with you on that. But I'm just saying, I think that when it comes to these communities being neglected historically, it doesn't just happen in black communities. It happens in poor white communities as well in certain parts of this country. But I agree with you 100%. This is absolutely about race in terms of the targeting of Lowndes County. There's no question it's about race. I just think also poor communities suffer from this, and so class is also a part of the problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with it, and I'll say too, I have been critical at times, and still remain critical at times of the local government in Lowndes, which I think has misspent some money. And I think the people who are deeply involved in this thing, and I don't know specifically if Catherine has addressed this or not, but I think some others who have been involved in this, as she has talked about at times where there have been some things that have been done, with some contracts that should have been executed a little more cleaner, and some things that should have happened that have not, despite there being funding available for some things. And I think those things have played into this over the course of several years, especially lately after this started receiving attention. Even back during, I believe in the Obama years, this started receiving some attention, and certainly in the Biden years, it got a lot of attention and had some movement. But I think, this thing should have been moved along a little farther, and I think some people took advantage of some stuff around there that should not have happened. But that's not, that's just one small piece of this.
Yeah. And another to go along with what you're saying, Josh, another issue, in my opinion, is the lack of effective representation. You've got people in the legislature who've known about this, and you really hadn't heard a peep out of them. You got people in Congress who, for years and years, didn't, while this was going on, didn't really say anything. Now, I'll give credit to Terry Sewell. Terry Sewell, I think it was a few years ago, or maybe a couple of years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, I was down in Lowndes County with Catherine and a team of us, and Terry Sewell had convened some kind of a meeting. So I don't know when in her term this got on her radar, but I will say that she did convene a meeting or participate in a meeting and made some kind of a commitment to take some action. But by and large, the government, the various levels of government have failed the people of Lowndes County. And, I mean, it just seems to me like if I was, and I don't even remember now who their legislative people are, but I always thought, once I learned about it, and especially once I started going down there with Catherine, that if I were their legislator, I don't know how I could sleep at night if I wasn't picketing or introducing bills or making speeches on the floor, weekly, if not daily, until somebody heard me and decided to take some action.
I'm the same way, man. I would have been, they would have been tired of seeing me.
Yeah.
Oh God, here comes Moon about the damn sewage again. I mean, it would have
Yeah.
just, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah, it hasn't. I know Terry Sewell has, and some other people have taken up the cause at various points, but it has not had, like a lot of times with poor communities, it just is not something, their treatment just kind of gets brushed off to the back burner a lot of times. And it just, they, it's hard to keep it front and center. And that's, it's a shame. It really is. It's hard to keep it front and center, and it's hard to keep people interested, and it's hard to get movement on a lot of that stuff. And so I wish they would. Speaking of government failures, um, there was a rather large one exposed this week in the state of Alabama, and it was by APR, and Jacob Holmes wrote the story about this week for us, and it involved State Representative Corey Harbison. He's a Republican from Cullman, and he didn't want to be a state representative anymore, and so he just quit going. And the trouble is, he just quit going like 2 years ago. He went. I just read the opening two paragraphs of this thing. State Representative Corey Harbison announced last month that he would resign by April 15th to allow a special election to fill his House District 12 seat. While Harbison framed the decision as a way to ensure continued representation for his constituents, legislative records and interviews with lawmakers suggest Cullman residents have effectively been without active representation for much of the past 2 years. Despite being marked present in official House journals, Harbison admits he rarely traveled to Montgomery in 2024, has not attended at all during the current 2025 session, which has, but I believe, 8 days remaining in it, and was only sporadically present in 2023, relying instead on others to cast votes on his behalf while continuing to draw his legislative salary.
That is insane.
Is it not?
How did I don't understand something. How did his Republican colleagues allow that to happen? How did they just allow him to do that?
They were perfectly happy to just keep voting his machine as a Republican, and just I mean it's insanity, right? It's insanity. I mean,
Well,
how is that legal?
It is insanity, and it seems like the state ought to be going after him for the money that he was paid.
Yeah,
They ought to be going after him for that. And his constituent, quite frankly, if I were a constituent of his, if I could find a reason to connect his lack of participation with something that was wrong in our area, I think I'd try to sue him or get a group of us to sue him. I mean, what is that?
Yeah, it's no, he said he might have made it to 9 of the 30 legislative days last session. I mean, and I mean, he said he blamed it on essentially the fact that it was tough to travel after the family added 2 new children, and and there were some health issues and things like that. But resign.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you're having problems, I mean, people get that you have family issues.
Yes.
Things happen.
Yes.
They happen to all of us. But the responsible thing, and this guy's 39 years old, by the way.
Yeah, right.
He ought to know better. I mean, he's not. We're not talking about some 15-year-old kid. We're talking about a 39-year-old man with a family who thinks that it was perfectly fine for him to get paid when he's not showing up for work. I mean, he should have resigned. That's what he should have done.
And I'm All right, so let's say in 23, you say, "Oh, well, man, it sure is hard for me to get down there, but I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to try to do better." And then you only make it to 9 of 30 days in 2024. You got to say at that point, this is just not getting any better. I'm going to have to back out of this thing. Okay, I'm going to have to at that point. Nobody's saying you got to resign immediately, but after you only make it to 9 of 30, you can't then go into 2025 and be like, "Yeah, I'm just not going." You can't. That's and
Well,
drawing the check too, man. That's the
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, I think, and that is the problem. Well, that's a major part of the problem. Also, the other part of the problem is you're not representing your constituents, but they think that you're representing them when you're not. So you're not doing that, and then you're taking the check on top of that. I think even Josh, I think you're being kind because, man, if I get to day 30 and I've only made 9, I mean, any other job in America, you're out. You're out. You're out. I mean, that guy should have made that decision well before that, in my opinion, well before day 30. He should have made that decision that I can't do this.
Yeah, no.
Has he given any kind of explanation as
Yeah.
to why he thought this was okay?
Here I can give you his quotes here. There usually isn't a day go by that I don't get 3 or 4 calls from people needing this or that. Heck, I give out my cell phone number on public platforms. That way I can be available to help people. I can do that part all day long. It's just being down in Montgomery that is an issue. I have been very open about that with everyone. Had I known that we were going to have another baby, I wouldn't have ran this term. Sometimes life throws curves at you and you do what you can with it. Harbison welcomed his second son through in vitro fertilization, only to find his wife pregnant again through natural means, with his daughter being born just 11 months later. Harbison explained that both children faced early medical issues, although they have since improved.
Well, we're glad that his family is okay.
Of course.
But that is just, I'm sorry. I
We're
don't
talking about
see,
50 some odd grand here, man, a year.
yeah, and the idea that, he was okay, so he made his cell phone public. He was able to help people, but that's not why people elect you. People elect you to go down to Montgomery, cast votes, help to shape legislation that's going to benefit your district as well as the state. I mean, what he's talking about, and I even question how much help was he even able to be? What does that mean? He was able to help people. What does that mean?
I don't know, but I don't, honestly, he couldn't have helped people that much. What I really also like to know is, has he sponsored any legislation at all? Did he take part in the Coleman County, delegation? Has he done anything to help his district in any shape or form? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look and see if he sponsored any legislation, put anything up there. But I'll say another thing though. And this brings up another point here that I think deserves some attention as well, which is the fact that he admits, as do other lawmakers, to having people vote his machine for him.
That's a big problem also.
This is not a Republican Democrat thing. It's a being present sort of thing. Listen, and I can understand it. If you get sick at some point and you can't make it in, but even with that, I'd say,
Right.
you know what, you just missed the vote. All right. You missed the vote. If you want to have a vote, a limited number of vote by proxy, or where there's a specific format that must take place and certain steps that must be taken. Let's say there's a big vote coming up and you are absolutely dog sick, or you're suffering from some medical condition and you've had to go into the hospital for treatment and you want to cast your vote in this, set aside these 3 or 4 days or whatever that you can do that for, and put the paperwork in to say, on this vote I want this, on this vote I want that, and let people see it, where you've participated in this thing. I think that's the only fair way to do it. But this is not right. This is this is not right.
It sounds like, unless I'm missing something, it sounds like this guy just checked out. He was just like, and he didn't bother to sponsor any legislation, it sounds like. It sounds like he didn't. I mean, did he even confer with his fellow legislators, on anything? It sounds like he just checked out, which,
It's hard to confer if
again,
you're not there, you know?
right, right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I would imagine that there might be, maybe you could have phone meetings, maybe you could have Zoom meetings, but it's hard to believe that he could be an effective representative of his area if he's not there when he's supposed to be there, when everybody else is there. I don't get it. And then, like you said, he didn't show up at all this legislative session, which again makes you wonder, how do you do that? How do you do that in good conscience? I don't get it.
I'm with you. I don't either. I just don't know. I just don't know. I've never heard of anything like this where you just quit
Yeah,
going, and you
yeah,
still take the money, I mean,
yeah.
I've heard of people, having family things come up and, then them trying to work through them and eventually working it out, missing. So I've heard of people missing some days, extended numbers
Mhm.
of days and stuff in the legislature and then trying to do different things to work around that. And I've heard of people resigning because they couldn't make it work for them in their situation and having to go and just do something else, and give it up. I've heard of some people, missing some days and it being sporadic because of health reasons, but and ultimately getting back on their feet and coming back and being okay. But they got back on their feet and were okay. They didn't just continually miss day after day after day for years on end. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's just not the way it should work.
So just to recap and be clear, 2023 session, sporadic.
Sporadic.
2020, what,
Four.
24 session, 9 out of 30
Yeah.
days was he there, and again, no real accountability. And then this session, he just didn't show up at all.
Zero.
Yeah, that just sounds inexcusable to me. He's still getting the check. Nobody knows he hasn't resigned. He's still getting the check. So he's getting paid for doing nothing, and he's not representing his people. I don't get it.
Yeah, no, that's a problem situation. It's a problem situation. So, all right, let's slide out of here. We're going to come back with Attorney Ruby Adams. She's an immigration attorney from in the Florence area, and talk about some of the immigration issues that are currently ongoing in this state and around the country, and talk about just some of the horrific things that are taking place in the immigrant community and how those folks are dealing with it. All right, we're going to come back in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy now to have with us Ruby Adams. She's from La Raza Legal, an attorney specializing in immigration law. And right now, there's a lot of immigration law to be going around, and a lot of things that people need an immigration attorney to handle for them, because a lot of other people, particularly the folks occupying the White House, do not care so much for the law anymore, and what the Supreme Court says, or just whatever the hell they'd like to do this week. And so we wanted to kind of get Ms. Adams on and talk for a minute just about kind of what's happening in the immigrant community and what's happening from a legal standpoint with a lot of folks. And because David and I, we like to play attorney, but we don't get paid a lot for it, and for good reason.
Yeah,
so
we don't have law degrees. That's the
yeah,
reason.
that's one reason. That's one reason. But Ms. Adams, first of all, thank you for coming on and spending some time with us. And I know you got to be busy right now. And I guess just well, you know what? Instead of speculating, are you busy right now? And what is life like for an immigration attorney at this point in time?
Yes, we are busy right now. Surprisingly, not as busy, with people coming in, new cases coming in, because people are scared. just to be honest with you, we saw like kind of a halt on affirmative immigration applications kind of after inauguration, just because people were scared, and rightfully so, because, to submit an affirmative application is to um, expose yourself to the government. Hey, here's my name. Here's where I'm at. Here's where you can find me. So I think for those reasons, people have been a bit deterred, surprisingly. But where I say we've still been busy is because um, we have the responsibility to stay up to date on all the new laws, all the things that are developing, and just things to advise clients when they do come in to consult with us, or even our current clients, just to know how to best advise them. We've had to stay up to date on all of the, changes and things of that nature, in which, as you both know, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of things going on here every time you look around. And so that has kept us very busy and just staying informed so that we can provide the best advice.
Well, you talked about all the different things going on. Um, what when you see the news and you see what's happening, what are the things that most trouble you? What stands out to you as the most egregious things that are happening?
By far, just the lack of just respect by this administration for due process and the rule of law, which is what we see that's happening with the most recent case of Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully detained. They've already admitted it was an administrative error that he was sent to this El Salvador prison. So if we start with one person, where do we draw the line? And right now we're seeing this play out in live action, where we're fighting to get him back here, and the Trump administration just continues to disregard and not follow court orders. And if we are going to allow them to do this, what does it mean for the future and for others and for U.S. citizens? At the most recent press conference, I know that the press secretary said something about, they're looking into how they can send U.S. citizens to these prisons. And so it's just a very slippery slope. And that's what concerns me, that it becomes, if they can do it with these people, they can do it with anyone.
Yeah, and that is a very real concern. It should be of a very real concern, as I think you've suggested, to all Americans, because anybody that runs afoul of this administration, it sounds as though they are of a mind that they can deport people basically at will. That's the tone of their rhetoric. So, as an attorney, with an administration that does not seem to respect court orders, court rulings, what are the legal options for us, or are all legal options now rendered basically ineffective?
Well, we're about to find out. We're about to find out.
Hmm.
And I say that because it's playing out in court. And the most recent thing that I think came out today was that Judge James Boasberg found them to be to be probable cause that the Trump administration was in criminal contempt of court, because basically there was an order. They've not shown that they followed the judge's orders or even made any efforts to comply with the judge's orders. So the judge, found them to be probable cause that they're in contempt of court. So after this, we have to see, is that contempt going to be enforced? Are the U.S. Marshals going to step in? Is something going to happen? Because typically, other people, when you're found to be in contempt, there could be consequences. And so we're going to see if those consequences are going to be put in place against the Trump administration or not. Obviously, if they're not, and the Trump administration gets away with it, and they don't bring back Mr. Abrego Garcia, that's when we've reached the point of, there's no there's no rule of law, they're not following the law, they're not subject to the law. And that's when we've got a very serious constitutional crisis where people, not just people, that aren't supportive of this administration, even people that are supportive or voted for Trump, they should be concerned because when there's no law, that means they can do whatever it is they want when they're not following the law. So I think that, we're this is all coming to a head essentially, and we're seeing it play out in real time. And, the next steps that happen are very important, and everyone should be paying close attention.
So you talked about the use of the U.S. Marshals, and many people may not realize that the U.S. Marshals are, at least theoretically, the policing arm of the courts. Um, what could the U.S. Marshals possibly do to the President of the United States or to the President's subordinates there, the people that are part of his cabinet or that are part of the executive branch in order to enforce the law or court rulings?
So, typically when we see contempt, we're going to have things like, sanctions or, jail time in some sentences and things like that. But, just to be quite honest with you, I don't think well, at least not in my lifetime. And, I might not be that old, but not in my lifetime. I've never seen where, administration is in contempt of court and what needs to be done because typically, presidents respect the rule of law and the judge's orders, until now. So, I'm not even sure what that will look like, which is why we're so, us attorneys, I just had a meeting with some local attorneys in my area where we're discussing how serious this is becoming because of the concerns that we have a president who's not following the law and, acts as if he's above the law in his entire administration.
Let me ask you one other question, just bringing it back to uh, I guess, the far more basic concerns of people who are immigrants. What's happening in Florence in terms of how the immigrant community there is responding? You said that people are afraid to come into your office, so you're not seeing as much activity. But what is that? How is that playing out? I guess when they're not coming into your office, are you saying that they're just are they in hiding? Are they self-deporting? What is actually happening, to the best of your knowledge?
So I wouldn't say they're afraid to come to our office. They're afraid to do anything to expose themselves to the government, and with us being immigration attorneys, being, that's the primary part of our practice, they're afraid to do anything, to move, you know what I mean? Just because there are some people that maybe might have came in undetected and, they may qualify for a certain petition, to an affirmative petition, but to submit that petition is to, say, here's where I am, here's where you can find me. And so that's just a risk when you've got, this example of Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was here lawfully, allowed to be here. And he even got deported. So people are just fearful of submitting petitions because of this. So I wouldn't say it's a fear of coming into our office. It's just a fear of doing anything with immigration when right now things are so stringent and really things are different than they were just a couple months ago. For example, a type of an affirmative petition. When I say affirmative petition, this means petitions with the USCIS because, as ICE, there's different departments. USCIS is the affirmative where you file family-based petitions, and things of that nature. So there's a U visa, for example. U visa provides you some kind of protection from deportation, and a U visa is for individuals who've been a victim of a crime in the U.S. And you can qualify for this petition even if no matter your manner of entry, right, or your current status. all you have to have is that proof that you were a victim of a crime. Well, typically that was a protection, but we're seeing now that even these people are being detained. And that to us immigration attorneys is very concerning because, we were able to provide that assurance to people that having this petition approved gives you a protection, right? And so if now we're seeing, the administration's not, and even all the way down to immigration, is not following, what the law says, because the U visa does say when you get your approval notice, it says that you're basically deferred action, kind of like the DACAs, the dreamers. They're not going to deport you. But then they are getting deported, and, people are hearing of this, and we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't at least warn people about this. So I'm going to tell people, the truth about what's going on. We've seen this happen, not to any of our clients, but we just would like for you to know. And of course, that's going to deter people from doing anything, because why am I going to do it if it's still going to put me at risk?
Y- You know, listening to this, what's striking to me is where are the jackasses that would love the Second Amendment and were going to protect all of us from the tyrannical government because were hoarding all the guns? This is what you were getting the guns for, wasn't it? But uh, uh, it's seriously, it strikes me as well as this is going to be not only a deterrent for people to come into your office and to file these forms. I know you said not coming into your office, but to approach y'all to do the affirmative actions and things. But also, it's got to be affecting schools, in immigrant children going into schools, and it also has to be. And this one is the more troubling one to me. Is It's got to be affecting the reporting of crime in immigrant communities, which puts people at significant
100%.
personal risk. Is it not? Am I wrong about that?
You are not wrong about that, and we've seen that as a real issue, and what we've tried to do to alleviate those issues is offered, making reports here at our office with officers here where they have more protections. If they're we call the officer here to the office and do that with our clients, just because it is so they're fearful to make reports, because if I call them to report where something horrible has happened to me, I've been a victim of domestic violence or whatever it may be, next thing you know, I could be in jail and then end up in ICE custody. So it just makes them a very vulnerable population, especially for the people who know. And then they prey on these people because they know, well, they're undocumented, so I can do it, and I know they're not going to do anything. So it is a very, very, bad place to be in, just as a society, where we can sit by and let people, have horrible things to happen to them, but then the people that are supposed to protect them, they don't feel like they can protect them. It's very scary situation. Um, and, like I said, it's just something where we're trying to do our best, to help them, like I said, with bringing them into the office. That's what we can offer, instead of you taking yourself to the police station. And then, another thing that you mentioned with the schools, that is a real issue as well. When Trump, when the administration inauguration, Trump first went into office, we went to some local churches and spoke with people and just talked to them about their concerns. And one of them was, do I send my kids to school? Now, are they going to come get my kids at school and those things? And so, it's a delicate situation to balance, because as you know, we have truancy laws here. If you don't send your kids to school, you can still end up in the court system, And so it's like, you don't send them because you're afraid for them to get deported, but then you end up in court, and then you're still exposing yourself, to getting into legal trouble. And so it's just a very, very just difficult situation for some of these people to be in. And like we were talking about earlier, everyone should be concerned about what's going on. It shouldn't just be one side of the political spectrum, because, it's just injustice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's what makes me angriest. Well, I don't know if I could say anything makes me more angry than something else makes me. But it's to know that there had been a lot of good work done, particularly in the Northwest Alabama area, in terms of education advancement for immigrant students, Hispanic students in particular. They'd put a lot of time and effort into some of those school systems over there. I believe it was the superintendent in Sheffield had really spent years trying to build those programs up over there, and to watch that now be threatened over the whims of a few racists is really, God, it's infuriating. But I did want to ask, when you were talking about dealing with the local police officers there, have they been good about coming in and trying to put people at ease and taking care of the victims of crimes that y'all have had to assist?
In our area, they've been pretty good with us. I won't say that they haven't. We've got we're a small town. So, we know Florence is not that large. So fortunately, we know police officers that we can trust. Not to say, that the ones we don't know we can't trust, just the ones that we know and trust, that can help us in these situations. They've been very helpful and very willing to assist in getting those reports made when people were
Good.
scared.
Good, good. That's it's and I don't know if you've had any dealings personally with ICE or not, but you know that also is such a mystery to me of who are these people that are willing to do this, that are willing to act this callously towards other human beings, who are willing to go out and defy court orders and go and essentially kidnap people. I mean, the poor student in at the University of Alabama that was dragged out of his apartment at 3 in the morning, and he's done nothing wrong at all. I mean, he's on no list. He's done nothing wrong. He's not threatened a soul. He's not involved in any protest. He's just going to school. I mean, who are these people that are willing to go in and do this? And have you had any interaction with any of those folks?
Not so much myself. My law partner has had more interactions with ICE just because sometimes, some of our clients do hire us to go with them to these ICE check-ins because some individuals who are here are required to do ICE check-ins depending on their manner of entry. And so he's gone with some of our clients to these ICE check-ins. So he's gotten to meet them face to face and things of that nature. But I typically don't do those ICE check-ins. So I am the attorney in the office that focuses on the affirmative petitions, and the other attorney in the office represents individuals in immigration court. So that's why he primarily does that. But they're just, I've spoken by phone with some ICE officers, and they seem, fine by phone, but I don't know, them personally. And so I just, I can't even get into their minds. I would assume they're just following orders from someone higher up than them, doing a job. But I just don't know why at some point you wouldn't get to a point where, why am I doing stuff that's so crappy? Like, maybe this is not what I need to be doing. Uh, but one thing that we haven't discussed that I think it's important to discuss today is the El Salvador prisons, and what's going spreading right now, and with Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I don't know if you guys saw that the senator from Maryland, I forgot his name,
Yeah, yeah, I did see that where
Van
he was going to take
Hollen.
the visit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he did. He just recorded a video outside after speaking with the vice president, I believe, and said that, the vice president said to him that there was no record of this man ever being involved with any type of MS-13. And, the same thing, the US hasn't found any kind of record other than just an assertion made by ICE and I think DHS, like DHS Secretary Noam. It's just, they're now to the point where if we just make a statement, we're trying to assert that as evidence, which has never been the case. You have to have evidence to support your allegations, but I feel like this entire administration treats if they just say something, it's fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how they act.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I was going to say it's nice to hear at least one vice president say something, acknowledge the actual facts of this, since our vice president will not. And it's just, you're right. It has been an absolute atrocity what has happened with him. No matter what you feel like, even if this man was the leader of a violent gang from El Salvador, then you have the due process in place to prove that. That's what we do here. That's kind of what separated us from the rest of the world for all these years, is we go through this due process and the rule of law, and to ignore that at the highest level should scare the hell out of everybody.
Definitely. I definitely agree. And that's what's kind of, just so wild about all of this, is that I was looking at the president has been trying to use, the Alien and Enemies Act to basically try something used reserved at wartime, where you can deport somebody without that due process, without seeing a judge, without any of that. And so that's what's going on. He's using this when the last time it was used was in like World War II. And it was used, but it was never used to send people to a country they weren't even from.
Yeah.
I was watching a 60 Minutes episode where they were talking about how basically Nazis had more rights than people are having right now, because they were sent back to Germany, where they were from. And right now we're seeing where that people aren't even getting to choose to be sent to their own home country. They're just being shipped to El Salvador, which is, just infuriating.
Yeah, it really is. The whole thing is infuriating. And listen, Ruby, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us and trying to help us explain to everybody kind of what's going on, and being a voice of reason and a little bit of hope for people out there as well. So thank you so much for what you're doing and for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, for, giving me this platform to share some of my thoughts, and just keep, advocating for those people, because a lot of times, and that if for anyone who's listening, all I can say is, continue to be an ally for these people, because they can't speak up for themselves because they're afraid right now. So, those of us who have a voice and position we don't feel afraid to say anything, you need to say something for these people. And like I was saying earlier, everyone should be concerned, because who's next,
Yeah. Yeah, you're right about
Yep.
that. You're right about that.
Yep.
All right. That was Ruby Adams, attorney. If you're in need, know somebody who is, look them up at La Raza and over in Florence, and they can help you out. If they can't, I'm sure they can find somebody who can. But they are a friendly ear and an advocate. So do that. All right, we're going to slide out to Alabama politics this week. We'll be back in a minute. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama politics this week. Josh Moon, David Person. Thanks to Ruby Adams for coming on, spending some time with us. Our thanks to the folks at Wind Creek Entertainment for sponsoring this thing. Alabama politics this week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. Thanks to the folks at the Southern Poverty Law Center for their sponsorship as well. But we got to get all this out of the way because David's got a hot take. And I'm oh man, he's gonna make y'all so mad when he says this shit. Oh, you're not gonna believe it. You're not gonna believe it what he says. Oh, David's got a hot take. All right, ready? Go ahead, tell him what you think, David.
It puts me on the fringe, I know, but as I was listening
listen, before you say it.
All right.
I'm so happy this is not me. I'm so happy that it's normally me that says this shit. That's normally me who says it. I'm so happy that it's you and not me. Go ahead.
All right. So as I was listening to Ruby Adams talk and talking about the lack of due process, immediately in my mind, I went back to what the United States did with Osama bin Laden. Now, I know that he is universally reviled, and I get all of that, but I was always uncomfortable with the fact that we summarily assassinated or killed this man without trying to capture him and bring him before a court of law, whether that's in the United States or The Hague, wherever it had been, and laid out the case for why he was guilty of what we said he was. And then if the ruling had been execution within U.S. law or the world court, I would have been. I'm not in favor of the death penalty, but I could have lived with it. Even though I don't support the death penalty, but I could have lived with it. But the fact that we never adjudicated, this case with bin Laden has always bothered me, that he was just killed and then buried at sea or whatever they did with him, and then that was it. It was over. That just bothered me. And I think and the reason I'm bringing that up is, to me, that kind of sort of unilateral, action taken quickly, the way it was, done the way it was, lays the foundation for, to some degree, and I'm not saying it's a straight line, Josh, but I think it does, at least philosophically, lay the foundation for some of what we see happening today, with the Trump administration making unilateral decisions without due process, without adjudication. There it is. It puts me on the fringe, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, all right. So I get what you're saying. I do. I understand. I would say that my arguments against some of what you said is that, one, Al Qaeda, for which he was quite clearly the leader of Al Qaeda, and there was no disputing any of that, repeatedly took responsibility for 9/11, and for various other attacks as well, and had taken it, responsibility for these things and said they were responsible for them. Sent out messages, recorded videos, did various other things. Number two, I would say that I thought the mission was capture or kill. I thought it was a capture or kill mission. Maybe I missed, it was the movie, the Zero Dark 30 movie. But I believe that was a capture or kill mission. Now, I'm not saying they tried very hard to capture, and no, I mean, but they're SEALs, and that's, they went into a very chaotic situation outside the Islamabad. Is that where they were? Islamabad?
I don't even remember
compound.
at this point.
But
maybe.
Regardless, I think that they would say that there was justification in their actions of killing them, that there was not simply a drone strike that was, people criticize Obama a lot for his various drone strikes, but this was not a drone strike. They sent in the SEAL team, and so I would assume a portion of that going in meant, we're gonna go in and attempt at least to capture out of that. I would also say that there were going to be, if we carried through with the capture, there were probably going to be various challenges presented and risks that were taken in doing that. And so I think those have to be a consideration as well.
What do you mean when you say risks? What kind of risks?
Well, I think there are going to be risk in both executing the capture itself and exiting the premises with Osama bin Laden, and then also in housing him somewhere, and meeting the legal requirements of maintaining him as a prisoner of war at some facility. And I think that you were going to have repeated issues and attacks and things that come about from because of that. I don't know. I'm not a big death penalty guy myself. However, that only goes as far as typically as somebody doing something to kids. And then I'm like, I can't have that. But, and then in this situation, I got no problems with what went down. I think there are other examples that better get to what you're saying that we've done, both Democrat and Republican, that get to laying the groundwork for some of these things. However, I think that what Trump is simply doing right now is taking advantage of a loophole, basically, of good, the expectation of good moral character among the leader of the free world. And we expected our presidents to be of a certain make, and he is not. And that's the
Yeah,
bottom line.
and I'm not going to say that what was done to bin Laden was as egregious from a moral standpoint or even a legal standpoint, perhaps, than what is being done here by the Trump administration. But what I am saying is that I think the idea that a person can be killed by the United States government without any kind of a high profile person accused of a serious, horrific act could be killed summarily without any kind of process that lays out the case, to me, is problematic. I understand what you're saying about, the fact that Al Qaeda, had made certain declarations and so forth. But if this were a case of a United States, and I know he wasn't a United States citizen, but if it were a United States citizen or even an immigrant in the United States who had been accused of something and who even said outside of court, yeah, I did it, there's still a judicial process that takes place, something that documents on the record in a way that is verifiable for history's sake, what the person did and their elocution that they did it. And this didn't happen with bin Laden. That, I think, is problematic for history. Even though I'm not taking the position that he wasn't guilty, please be clear about that. My position is that it wasn't adjudicated. Not that he wasn't guilty, but that it wasn't adjudicated in a way that can be preserved for historical purposes and that will hold up to historical scrutiny. The fact that there may have been problems with housing him and while the judicial process was moving forward, I get that. But then again, I think that's why you work collaboratively, as we do with extradition cases and other things, with governments to try to ensure that the process is as safe and seamless as possible when trying to execute justice. And to me, you do the same thing. Obviously, it would have been on a much larger scale, but the same thing could have been done where there was some kind of cooperation and coordination and planning to try to ensure that he would be held accountable in a court of law, again, whether that's The Hague or some court of law in the United States, so that this could, again, be preserved and documented for posterity's sake before any kind of ultimate judgment was executed, whether that's, executing him or whether that's life in prison or whatever it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. All your points. I take all your points. I just, I think they were fair. And they searched. He didn't come peacefully. He went out. They did what they do, and I think that it was at that point he had chosen his fate, and his fate was, what happened. And I've honestly, I'm pretty comfortable that he was the guy who was responsible for the deaths of 3,000 plus Americans and many more and others around the globe for the terrorist acts that he perpetrated on a number of different people.
And again, that's not my argument.
Sure.
I'm not saying he didn't do it. I'm just saying I don't think due process was in play, and I think it should have been. And now we have an administration that is going even further with dispelling with due process.
Well, but I don't
with
think
people who are a lot more vulnerable and who are innocent.
Yeah.
And we believe in some cases of any crime.
But I don't think I don't think that's really fair, though. I mean, because
Okay, tell me why.
Because I don't think there was a choice for due process. I don't think there was because before you get to due process on this, well, I mean, first of all, there was a process that led up to, hey, this is the person we believe is responsible for this, okay, and we're going to search for him and execute a capture or kill mission to get
What
him,
was the process?
and
What was the process?
the process in determining of whether or not he was responsible for that? Well, I think it was the
Determining,
process
right.
of, yeah, the CI. I mean, we had a number of different things that went through Congress and the 9/11 papers and all of these different things. Not to mention, as we've already said, the taking of responsibility for these actions by Al Qaeda and by Osama bin Laden himself. And that led. But what I'm saying is that led to the process in this of going on a capture or kill mission to take him into custody or do whatever happens. And at that point, it becomes, if it's the sort of the same as if a person robs a bank, or let's say a person robs a bank and then takes off and barricades himself in a home, and the police start to enter that home and he shoots at them and they shoot and kill him. Are you saying he is denied due process?
No, but what I am saying is that I think in a case like that, what we do have in the aftermath is some sort of, at least as I understand it, in the aftermath, we do have some kind of court proceeding that, and some kind of legal process that takes place in order to, I guess I'll say, consummate the execution of justice. You know, what we had with bin Laden was he was buried at sea, and that was it. That was it. That was all. You know, there never was any, to my way of thinking, there never was any formal, legally recognized way of laying out the case in a way that would have made it clear and indisputable, you know, what he had done and who he was and all of that stuff. And again, I'm not sitting here trying to debate whether or not U.S. intelligence was right or wrong. You know, I think I accept, as you do, that all things being equal, as far as I could read history and understand media reports, that he was indeed that guy. You know, he was indeed affiliated with Al Qaeda, leading Al Qaeda, and that Al Qaeda was responsible. All I'm saying is that I think that there should have been a way to lay this out legally and openly, in a way that, again, would be where everything would have been preserved for history, and not this just, you know,
Well,
what
I mean,
I
they had the
consider to
9/11
be.
commission. They had the 9/11 commission that produced a fairly substantial report, and then
Yeah, but that's
they also
one-sided, though. That's one-sided. I mean, I'm saying that, you know, there should have. I mean, you know, we know how court proceedings go in this country. You have a prosecution, you have a defense.
right.
You know, there was no defense.
Well, I mean,
There
I'm
was
going to
no
go back
defense.
then
It was
to
all
the.
accusation of government. That's all
Well, I'm
it
going to go
was.
back to the bank robbing example that I had there. I mean,
Mhm.
that would have been adjudicated after the fact, only in an examination of the police shooting and whether or not it was justified. And at that point, everybody would have said, "We think this is the person." All the evidence points to the fact that this person robbed the bank. Case closed, and we're moving forward. And I think that's what happened with
Okay, and
Osama bin Laden.
that didn't happen with bin Laden.
What
There
didn't
was
happen?
no there was no after the fact. There was no after, unless I'm misremembering, and if I am, you know,
Well, it was a part of the 9/11
I'll
commission
shut up.
report.
Well, yeah, but again, I guess the scale of what we're talking about, to me, makes this require more than just what would have done what perhaps would have been done in the case of a bank robbery gone wrong, where somebody is killed, where the alleged perpetrator is killed. I think the scale of this and the global impact of this required something a lot more than that.
So let me last thing. So
Mhm.
what would you like to see out of it? I mean, what do you feel like you don't know about this that's important for us to review? Because I think we've both said that we don't have any doubts that he was responsible for this. We don't have
Mhm.
any
Mhm.
doubts that that Al Qaeda was this, that they took responsibility for it, that this person was guilty of this crime, and then he chose an alternative method to being captured when they came for him. And so, what in there would you
Well,
like to see explained?
what I would like, I guess what I would like is, first of all, and of course it's too late for any of this, but what I would like, first of all, for there to be, when it comes to the narrative that we were given about what happened, in terms of the attempt to capture him. You said it was a capture and kill. So in terms of the attempt to capture him, I think that all should have been, again, I just feel like it all should have been laid out in a legal proceeding that could have been examined and even could have been perhaps questioned by people legally on the other side of the issue. I think that in addition to that, there should have been, I think there should always be a way to preserve things in such a way that it will hold up for history. And the reason I keep coming back to that is we know that at least before the Trump administration's actions began to overshadow so much of what happens globally as well as nationally, that terrorism has been a very real and present danger to this world. And we know that Al-Qaeda, while it may have been diminished, it wasn't destroyed, and neither were we still got Hamas out there, and there's still perhaps other terrorist organizations and networks that are out there that are not as widely discussed. And I think that the best way to help, I'll say, at least to make an effort to make the ongoing case against terrorism, is to lay out in a clear, unambiguous way, fully transparent way, what happened with him, what happened with bin Laden, and the case against him, and why it was necessary. And my feeling is that, when you handle a bin Laden the way we handled him, you may be killing a person, but you're not killing an idea. You're not killing a movement. And perhaps it's a movement that will never be completely killed, but I think it would make a stronger case and maybe help to dissuade, to some degree, some future terrorists by having an open, honest examination of what happened and why. That's where I am on it.
Okay. We can move along now. Remember, send your letters to David Person. That's David Person.
The flaming liberal with the tie-dye T-shirt on. I wore the perfect shirt to make this argument today.
Oh, that's why I was just sitting there thinking, so I didn't even think about it. Oh, he's got the perfect T-shirt on for this argument. Oh,
I do.
Listen, those may be deporting
peace and
words.
love, baby. Peace and love.
If he is, David is now on the rendition list, and may find himself in an El Salvadorian prison before this is over.
Shoot, if that's all it took, I think I probably was on there already before this.
That's right.
If I'm on the list, I was already on the list.
Speaking of which, our right-wing nuts for this week are these Republican goobers who keep going to the prison in El Salvador, this supermax awful prison that is known for, being terrible and, in its treatment, inhumanity of with people. And they keep going down for these photo ops and taking pictures of people, but with the prisoners in the background, shirtless. I mean, it looks like, honest to God, it really does look like something from a Nazi photo. I mean, it looks like something from a concentration camp. I'm not equating the two, and don't get me, act like I am. But if you look at these things and you look and keep in mind, no matter who these people are back there, and I don't doubt that there are some very bad people in the background of these photos, okay? But they're still people, man. and it strikes me as so absurd. Why? I mean, first of all, why are you there? And why are you there? I mean, what example are you trying to set for? I mean, is that what you're wanting? You're wanting this inhumane prison in America for some reason? Because I got to tell you, we got some in Alabama that are pretty damned awful. And it just, look, there has been, and people love to talk about the crackdown on crime in El Salvador, and there has been a tremendous crackdown on crime in that country, one of the first ones in its history. It has moved it from off of the top of the list of one of the most dangerous places in the world down to a relatively safe country at this point. Okay, and a lot of it, the president and the folks that have led that effort should be congratulated for what they have been able to accomplish right there. But what they've been able to accomplish is secondary to what's taking place at this prison. Okay, the prison is not the reason why they're having this success of this. All right. The reason why is for the first time in the country's history, they decided to crack down on crime. That's the reason why they're having such success at it. It was like, the crime rate was just astronomical up to this point over the last, 2 or 3 decades. And now it's started to come down into a more acceptable range. And so that they've finally focused on it and started to actually do something about all the gangs and all the people and all the drugs and all the cartels and all the things that have typically driven that crime up. They've done this. But for these jackasses to continue to go down there and take their pictures in front of these people. And Christy Nome was the worst with her stupid Barbie-looking cosplay nonsense that she had. Not to mention the video she made the other day where she was pointing the damn rifle right at the head of the officer standing next to her the entire video. I mean, my God, man. And, I mean, even Republicans were making fun of that. But it's just atrocious. It's just atrocious, callous behavior.
Yeah, callous is a great word, Josh. I'm going to say, too, I think there's a lack of empathy here for human beings. There's a spirit of dehumanization that seems to define this entire administration, in my mind. And I'm going to tell you something. I'll tell you something else that reminds me of. You talked about the Nazis and what they were doing in terms of dehumanizing acts like this. It also reminds me of those infamous photos of people posing with lynched bodies. There's something very sinister in my mind that fuels people who feel like they can, even if a person is guilty of a crime, that they can treat them less than human, and that it's justifiable, that they can, and especially those of us who claim to be religious people, where we can talk about, how God made man and man is in God's image and all of this other religious rhetoric. But then we can be so dehumanizing to people, even people who are guilty of something, and justify that, after we've been preaching and teaching that they're made in they're made in the image of God. There's something that doesn't line up logically or theologically with that, and it's really, again, it's the callousness, it's the lack of empathy, and we should be able to be a nation where even if somebody is guilty of something, and as you alluded to, not all of those people being the focus of these photos are guilty of anything, but even for those who may be, they're still human beings.
Yeah,
they're still human beings.
And I'll say too, there's something wrong in the brain of somebody who says, "Ooh, I want to go to that prison." You know what I mean? I mean, like, there's no reason for them to go. Nobody's inviting them. There's no, it's not like it's in their district. They're not taking a tour of this for funding purposes. They're just doing it. They're like, "Ooh, let's go to that prison and take my photo standing in front of these prisoners." I mean, it's just, what is wrong with your brain that makes you think, "Ooh, that'd be a good idea"? That's what that's one of the things that bothers me the most about this is there's something wrong. There's something wrong with you. I mean, really, there's something wrong with these people, man, that keep going down there for this nonsense.
Well, Christy Nome, isn't she the one who shot her dog or something like that?
Yeah, shot the dog because he wouldn't behave.
I mean, it again, people, and I know they sometimes say that, pardon me, children who are cruel to animals as children are going to be cruel to human beings given the opportunity and given, and the ability perhaps later in life. Maybe this is something akin to that, where somebody who can be so callous and shoot a dog simply from not being what she wanted the dog to be, not because the dog was a threat or the dog was attacking her, but because the dog just simply wasn't what she wanted the dog to be, too soft or whatever it was she said. Well, this is the kind of person who apparently has no problem being cruel again, but this time to human beings.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. What's a bunch of right-wing nuts? My Lord. All right, let's get out of here. Y'all don't forget to send your letters to David about his.
Yeah. With my tie-dyed shirt on. Boy, I'm really liberal today, man. I'm so far to the left, I'm almost to the right. That's how liberal I am today.
You're about to circle all the way back around. That's how they get you. All righty. Until next week, y'all be safe out there.
Peace, love, and joy.